to finish up our sort of more formal annual meeting and then let everybody have a cocktail and then try to get you back in to hear one more story. But I think you're all going to be super glad that you took a little time here to get to know just one of my absolutely closest friends and professional colleagues. Sunny and I have worked together on 3 companies. One of them was called Performant. It was bought by Mercury Interactive. And the kind of the hallmark of that company when it was being bought was that within a couple of months of each other, Sunny's first child, his son Zubin, who just turned 21 a couple months ago, was born, and our youngest child, Mason, was born. And so they're just a couple of months apart back in 2003. And then he and Jeff Gerber, who is here today, right over there, founded a company called iConclude. We'll get into that, and then, of course, Apptio. So thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure. Great to see you both.
And then, of course, my partner, Steve Singh, is going to lead us off.
All right. So everyone settled in? All right. Come on in, close the door. So one of the things I've become a convert to is podcasts. And the other day, I was listening to a podcast for a commencement speech at the Gupta School of Science.
Oh, yeah.
So you and I have known each other a long time.
That's right.
And I got to tell you, I listened to that speech. Fantastic job, by the way. There's things about you I learned that I didn't know, and I felt embarrassed that I didn't know these things. And so, Sunny, I think it'd be great for you just to walk through a little bit of your background and kind of the impact your background had on you and how you think about the world.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. I think all the couple of bottles of wines we've had, that story's never come up, but I think you're really talking about kind of the entry to the U.S. So I kind of grew up back in India in a fairly sort of middle-class Indian family, highly educated, but resources were pretty tight. And so I'd gone to college in India at an accounting university, and I was bored out of my mind. And I was my parents didn't have really the capital to send me to the U.S. So I secretly, and my father didn't really want me to come. He didn't have the capital. So I started secretly studying SAT and applied to SAT. My mom was supporting me on the side on that. And so I took the SAT and applied and got into some university in South Carolina. And they gave me a $2,000. They gave me a in-state scholarship. And so that's when the fight started with the dad. I'm going to go. And he didn't want me to go. So he said, I can't afford your education. So I was like, what can you afford? And he was like, it's a negotiation, just like Matt and I have negotiated over term sheets.
Many times.
So it was like $2,000 and plane ticket. So that was my beginning on my journey to the US. And that always have had a chip on my shoulder. And so then coming to the university, 3 years, I felt like I needed to complete my education in 3 years rather than 4, just so I could get past and start working and earning some money. But anyway, looking back at college, that was probably one of the most defining moments and just surviving, and kind of living.
So much so that you endowed the School of Science.
Yeah. Now it's back home. Yeah, it's a pleasure, and I kind of serve on the board with the university. So it's been awesome.
It's phenomenal.
So then you eventually found yourself at Rational Software. That's where we recruited you out of there for Performant, where Jeff actually also worked. And tell us about the founding of iConclude and just briefly that journey, because I think in a lot of ways the journey from founding that company to selling to Opsware, was really foundational for your professional development as a founder and CEO.
Yeah, so I started my first company when I was 26 in Atlanta, which got acquired by Rational, which was a larger company owned by IBM. And I made all the mistakes, no venture. We were a 20-person company, got acquired, thankfully. So I ended up in Seattle, and I realized I needed to learn skills, so I ended up at Rational Software, learned a lot of go-to-market, product, business development, a lot of things. And then I just felt like I was still not ready for a startup. So I remember a recruiter, Jeff Markowitz, who probably has in
I
recent
talked to
and
Jeff
Google.
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so he introduced us, you and I, and I distinctly remember that conversation. And I was like, there was something about that conversation, Matt, and I think Madrona was very early in that journey. So I was like, I have to go work with Matt. And I don't even care what the company is. So I just, because you were talking a lot about some of the themes today, long-term investment. Anyway, I left Rational to join Performant. And I worked very closely with you. That was as an executive to help kind of sell that company to Mercury. Then I learned it was an Israeli-run company. I learned a lot of incredible skills around product, customer centricity. And so Jeff and I were working at Mercury, and we started brainstorming this idea, and we started customer validation before we wrote a single line of code. And I think really my memories of iConclude are mostly fond, but some are pretty horrific.
It was tough.
Which was really mostly around fundraising. So it started with, we had this great idea. We had customers willing to pay us money. Jeff had done an incredible job of building the product. I think I counted actually coming into this meeting, I think I must have made, you were the only venture capitalist in the entire planet who would bet on me at that time. So thank you for that. Back then, I made 35 trips to Silicon Valley.
Why were you wasting your time?
Yeah, so
that's what I always tried to figure out.
I thought, Silicon Valley is better, this and that, and then you're the one who you're like, hey, let's go.
Yeah, I think we not only worked out the what we would call today the pre-seed funding, you know, and by the way, we didn't tell Sunny this at the time, but this was just after we had kind of expired our initial investment period on Fund 2, and we hadn't quite done the first close yet on Fund 3. And so I went to my partners and I said, I have such high conviction about these two. Can we just write our own checks to back them? And Paul and Greg and Tom agreed, and that's how we funded the pre-seed round of iConclude.
And I really believe because we were onto something, we obviously did amazing things with our product, but the importance of capital and the importance of working with the right partner is kind of what I learned, other than kind of building the company. Because if we didn't have that, because of you, then we were able to get Greylock, and then we were able to get Shasta, and then everybody wanted to jump in,
imagine that.
after the Series B. So,
So there's a lot of lessons out of iConclude. Obviously, it got acquired by Opsware, and then Opsware acquired by HP. How did you think about Apptio? What was the process you went through to say, hey, look, this makes sense, there's a big opportunity here. How did you validate that?
Yeah, so Steve, what happened is, so 2 years in, we're $2 million in ARR. We get Ben Horowitz, at that time running Opsware, calls and says, hey, here's a $70 million check. Life-changing event. Jeff and I thought we were onto something spectacular. We didn't want to really sell, but it was such a amazing event in our lives financially and this and that. We said, let's do it. So I became Chief Product Officer for Opsware. Jeff became the CTO. And we engineered that. I felt like the desire to do something extraordinary was not fulfilled. It was like the two companies I'd started had all gotten sold early. And I just felt like I needed to do something to build a category, to build something longevity, and I didn't even know really what that was. In fact, at that time, I think the journey everybody in Seattle was talking about was Concur. So I think Concur's moat had a lot of influence of how and we didn't know each other till 2010, I believe. So that had a lot of influence. So I was like, I need to do something extraordinary, and that journey actually started. Ben Horowitz and I were in New York. We were talking to a lot of our customers who were buying HP, and so the CIO of Goldman Sachs said, hey, what are you thinking about doing next? And I just asked them, hey, what are you struggling with? And so they started giving me this idea of technology spend and value management. And then, ironically enough, I had, I'm a horrible golfer, and so is Matt, but we had decided for a golf game. So we we were just all shooting 120.
Yeah.
And then I told Matt, I said, hey, Matt.
For 9 holes.
And I said, I'm thinking about like this thing, which the CIO of Goldman Sachs told me, and I think it's something big. And I'd done a bunch of validations. I talked to 40 prospects from customers. So I'm like, I think we can build the next Salesforce.com for the CIO. And Matt, we talked and we brainstormed. This was before anything was built, and I think that was the forming of Apptio. So I really felt, and by the way, the story which we've never told is, 2 years in, we were, there's something ironic, after 2 to 3 years in these companies, we were at 10 million ARR, and we had an offer to sell the business for 300 million. They said any number which starts with 300. It's a large stack. And I remember calling Matt at that time. I'm like, I think we had a drink or something, and easy decision. We just like, we're not going to do it. We're
Not gonna do it.
It takes courage.
We're going to take the long perspective.
You know, and I think it's interesting because I remember that round of golf. It was bad. But I was trying to assess if 3 things, really. One, was there a customer-driven need for the problem that you were excited about? But 2, you know, Sunny and Jeff and some of the team had some success, and so are they still hungry? That was an easy yes. And are they still humble with the success that they've had? And that was a fast yes, too. And so it made it easy to want to start this next company together. And then, as you say, I mean, I remember with that first cab that we did, you know, over at our offices with like 10 customers, and everybody but, all due respect to our friends at Morgan Stanley, everybody but Morgan Stanley is like, this is 2007, it's got to be a software as a service business. And that was like a radical concept for the enterprise, that it's definitively going to be a SaaS offering versus some kind of on-premise offering. That was one of the big learnings out of that cab.
Totally, and I'd heard, I think Steve had spoken at the Madrona conference too at that time. So he was talking about the SaaS consumptive model and what the customers told us, and they were not even customers, we didn't even have a product. And then I think obviously our investors from Greylock with Anil, he also said, hey, Anil Bushri, I'm only going to fund this if you do this as a SaaS. And customers were like, this is never going to work.
Some of them.
Yeah, like data, but some were like, it's going to work, security, this and that, but we just made a bet very early on.
Made the right bet, big technological change. Another big bet you made was, you know, the office, there's 2 kinds of CIOs. There's a certain type of CIO who's in this room, you know, he's the chief investment officer. There's also the chief information officer. And in the world of virtualization, which was making life harder and all, that CIO didn't really have a lot of respect in the big enterprise organization. And you did something that just blew my mind in terms of how you created a category and gave a lot of respect and value to that group of people. Tell us about TBM.
Yeah, you know, so the category started to be coined Technology Business Management, TBM. So we kind of coined that category. And this is 2 to 3 years in. We had started to do some big deals. So there were 3 kind of very influential CIOs who pulled me aside and said, hey, listen, this category, you're giving a meaning to the CIO. This is just not a product buy. You're giving a meaning to our discipline. We are viewed by our CEOs in our organizations, the CIO of Cisco, Rebecca Jacoby, JP Morgan Chase, like we are viewed as, I remember the words, changing the toner of the printer. We're not viewed as value creators for the enterprises. And we are managing billions of dollars of budget. And so by bringing this cost and value discipline to technology investments, can elevate our role. So would you consider spinning this out into a nonprofit and create a competitive moat and around that? And you'll create a competitive moat, but we'll create an industry movement. And so we were only 3 of us at that time. I think you were with me in California, one of the conference rooms. And we said, okay, we came to the board, and the board was very supportive. We were like, okay, we're going to change the game. We are fundamentally going to change the game because our competitors, we had a bunch of ankle biter competitors. We were all pretty small. And one of the things I was thinking from a commercial perspective, because I know there are a bunch of CEOs and founders here, I was like, how do I charge 5 to 7x more than our competitors. And over time, our technology will kind of catch up, but how do we change the game in the market? And so, and then also do something incredible for the community. So both, there was a commercial element, but then there was a emotional element. And now that is a dominant community for the CIOs. There are 15,000 members, including 70% of the Fortune 100 CIOs who kind of come to these conferences. So it's become the moat.
It's incredible.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I was really impressed that you invited me to one of those conferences. And I walked out of there after having met the CIO of Exxon and the CIO of HP and a few others. I'm thinking, gosh, I've been doing this for a while and I can't get to these people. I show up at Sunny's conference at a company that's 1/10 the size, and you're sitting around with the people I want to talk to. I was totally blown away at that conference. Look, we're fast forwarding through 20 years of your life in 30 minutes. So I'm gonna move you to 2015. You're sitting around 100 million or so in revenues, and you're thinking about going public. What other options did you and the management team think about, and why go public?
You know, it was really tough, Steve, and we had so many debates, and you and I chatted a couple of times too during that time. It was probably the toughest time in my life because we've been running for 8-9 years, gotten to $100 million scale, category mode, new category. There was a lot of element. I have a tired team whose people are going on the promise of equity. There was a pressure from my team to kind of get some real liquidity. I think our investors, Madrona was very long-term perspective, and we had a lot of debates. So there was this like organic pressure building up from the investor community and the employee community. And at that time, there were not a lot of options. The private equity, which we'll kind of talk about, ironically, because they tried to make a bid for Apptio in 2016. That model was very much oriented towards EBITDA, not a growth, not balancing growth and EBITDA. I believe Marketo was one of the first ones, and Abe, I was talking to him over a drink. He bought Marketo. So I thanked him for that because that pioneered the way for companies like Apptio to be. It allowed Vista to think about a different kind of scale model. So reality is there were not that many options. I was concentrated in 300 customers, very lumpy business model. I was acquiring only 5 to 10 deals a quarter. So you miss one, as you know, in large enterprise cycles. It's life and death in the public markets. I didn't know what I didn't know. But we had a lot of debate. So we just said, let's go. And it was really hard. It was, in hindsight, we were not ready to be a public company.
Yeah, so you're 100 million in revenue-ish. You are way from cash flow break even.
Oh, we're losing like negative 15.
Right.
So we rule of 5, right? 25% growth.
Not the rule we're looking for. You turned down the offer in like July of 2016, July, August. We go public in September. And then your second quarter out, Q4 2016, you miss.
Big time.
That was fun.
So before you go there, what was the IPO?
So we priced at 600 million, 595. And even the day before, the pricing called and said, okay, let me just remind you, we know what your offer is. You're going to struggle. It's going to be challenging, but let me just kind of remind you of the term sheet. It's on the table. You don't have to ring the bell tomorrow. And we said, it was literally a 24-hour cycle. So I was like, no, we're doing it. We're going to go public and we're going to see how it goes.
So the stock goes down to less than $12 a share in
Which is like basically, so we IPO'd at 595. I think we were down to 250 ish market cap. I had 100 million, 150 million on the balance sheet in cash.
I think that's when I called my friend Sujal Patel and had him talk to you. But anyway, that's a different story.
I did talk to him, and Bill.
And so, we were crazy enough to stick with you at that point, and say, look, let's keep taking the long-term view. I think we knew we'd had some, kind of couple of deals that didn't come in time for the quarter, and these were these big lumpy deals. You had this whole, kind of, I think you had a late renewal or something that it was also pushed out. Might have been JP Morgan, can't remember. How did you approach, this was kind of a big gut check moment for you and your team.
Yeah, big gut check moment. And I think the other dynamic was going on with the existing investors too, like existing investors who had really supported us deeply through the years, other kind of high quality venture firms. And I found myself on the phone just begging and pleading at that time, just like, don't sell the stock, don't hit the market, just give us another quarter. This is my people who knew the company really, really well. And so I'm grateful, just really grateful for you guys sticking along with us. And I couldn't convince the other people at that time. But I have another friend in the room here, Amish. He had started running SQN Ventures, hedge fund, public equity, looking for companies which were distressed, and he started coming into the stock at that time. So I started finding a new kind of buyers and a new kind of views of kind of how you transform.
So partner, you're loving public life.
Yeah.
Right. And so when Vista approached you, how did you think about that? What led to, besides obviously there's an economic equation, what led to the decision?
So, so what happened is, based on some of the feedback from the board, Amish was very helpful too. We started acting on certain cost pressures. So we brought down a burn from negative 15-ish to close to break even. We did a couple of acquisitions in the public markets, which you were also very helpful on guiding me through that. So then what happens is we have a strategic, actually, I had never thought about working for private equity, but we were consistently executing in the public markets, and public markets started to reward us after 4 or 5 quarters. So we had a strategic buyer who kind of came out of nowhere. We were working with the strategics, and then literally October 5th of 2018 is when the first meeting with Vista happens. And they came in, and we have strategics kind of doing work on Apptio. We think maybe in a month, couple of months, we may get some term sheets. And then 2 weeks later, we have a term sheet for $2 billion. And a week later, we announce a deal.
Wow.
So it went like super fast. They had done a lot of work with McKinsey. They hired McKinsey 3 months before. They'd spent $1 million with McKinsey. So they knew everything about the business. And it was...
The only thing I would interject on that story, and maybe my memory's wrong, I think the first term sheet was like at $1.5 billion. Was it like 28 bucks a share?
Of course.
I mean, we had to work it.
Quite a bit.
And that's where Tom Bogan was awesome, who was on the board. And
I think you guys all flew to Vegas, and we were, it was a customer conference there.
But the point of bringing that out is you, again, had to say no a few times.
Many times. Steve, you had walked me through the story of Concur, how your final exit had happened. So we were, but in those times, as you know, you have to be, I mean, you're not bluffing. You have to be, they were at 1.5, we were at 2 point whatever, but our walk-away point was 2. You have to be so convicted. You've kind of gone through that journey. And you have to just say, okay, if this doesn't happen, we are ready to go stand alone.
So, but let's talk about that phase of the journey. So the company gets bought, $220 million in revenue, cash flow break even. This is beginning of 2019 when it closes. We're out now. It's Vista control time. And not every founder who's built their company to that point can lean into that kind of a control and playbook. Why did that work for you and for them?
Yeah, look, I think the first thing was when I sat down with Vista, thankfully they just sold Marketo. So I was looking for people like myself. I was looking for founders and CEOs who had been part of the Vista ecosystem. I didn't find many. Even the Marketo CEO had left. Founders had left. So I was like quite skeptical, and there were all these horror stories around private equity. But they were like very friendly towards me. They were like, hey, listen, we will build this around you, but as long as you have the appetite for transformation. And I felt like my work with Apptio was not done. My vision around Apptio was not fulfilled. So I'm like, hey, we can do something so dramatic in the private markets and with a partnership like with Vista. And I also wanted to morph my personal experience from being just an entrepreneur to an operator. And so I was like, I'm going to go in and I'm going to learn how to scale this company in a different sense, with a different type of partner and one controlling voice.
Yep.
And so I leaned in very heavily into that and kind of went through the COVID and all, and then, I mean, it worked out.
So maybe I know we're running out of time, so partner, maybe let's spend a few minutes on the future, right?
Yeah.
So you got a new generation of companies that will be thinking about, going public, being owned perhaps by private equity firms. What advice would you give them? How do you,
Yeah.
and what are
So
you
look,
going to
I
do
think,
what are you going to do next?
Yeah, so my passion, I've drunk the private equity Kool-Aid, love it. Like, I just think I serve on 2 other boards with Vista. We transformed Apptio, 500 million ARR, 2,000 customers, rule of 46, sold it for 4.6 billion recently. And I just feel like if somebody came to me when I was in 2015, venture-owned, and said, we can skip this whole public part, and which was like not a fun moment for me as a CEO.
Stressful.
And I just was spending my time on the wrong things that help you transform this business from 150 million to 500 million, to create value in the organization, add-on acquisitions. And I just believe there are a lot of high-quality companies, high-quality Apptios out there today, which require operational and financial transformation. And so ability to bring financial discipline, operational discipline, create leverage on the balance sheet, to do tuck-in acquisitions, talent transformation, to help these founders and CEOs achieve their dreams. Because founders and CEOs a lot of times are not motivated by the financials.
Yeah.
Like, you do it for, you do it for different reasons. You do it for the passion for doing something extraordinary.
Yeah.
So I think helping them achieve their mission and vision, and yes, creating great financial outcomes is kind of really
Part of it.
what I'm excited by, which
Yeah.
I think we've been spending a bunch of time on.
Yeah. We've only got a minute. Do you want to open it up for the audience? Anyone have any questions they'd like to hit Sunny with? Really?
We know it's not a shy group.
Too many drinks.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear your thoughts on public markets, short-termism, and kind of the overall state of public markets from the perspective of common equity investors, public equity investors, and how you see that evolving.
Yeah, I think actually the public market, I was actually talking to a bunch of public market investors too, because Apptio actually, interestingly enough, was on a path to go public again, if the IBM acquisition wouldn't have happened. So I did a non-deal roadshow again, which is a little time ago. So what I realized is the public market landscape has changed. First of all, like the appetite for a PM to spend time, there are a lot of journalists, so the amount of time they're spending on a company is really not that much, right? Very different than a private style investor. And so it's very sentiment driven, it's very short-term driven, and
No, go ahead.
Finish up, please.
okay.
Yeah, we got
So anyway, I think it's changed a lot, and especially, I mean, unless you're a Snowflake, unless you're a ServiceNow, they're very high quality companies which are ready. But I really believe the bar to kind of go public and kind of what the business model needs to look like, transactional, renewal rates, scale, I think there's a much more bigger opportunity I see to do that work in the private markets than the public markets.
Sonny, maybe we'll wrap up with this. First of all, we're grateful, all of us at Madrona are grateful for the partnership we've had with you. And in many ways, you're the embodiment of what long-term, horizon, long-term commitment is. Maybe you could speak a little bit to how do you think about the future? What does long-term commitment mean to you, especially in the next phase of your life?
Yeah, look, first of all, a lot of my lessons learned has been through partnership with you, with Matt, with the rest of the Madrona team. It's family. It's just coming here just feels amazing. Like from day one, like I felt like the completely long-term investment. And I, from an entrepreneur perspective, I cannot underscore that point because it is so critical. Every day you're feeling lonely. Every day. So I think really it's kind of like, you know, your parents thinking unconditional love. And I have felt that, I genuinely felt that, not just because I'm here today. So I think bringing that kind of mindset to the next generation of entrepreneurs and CEOs to help create value, and also for the investors. I mean, that's genuinely, and just building these long-term relationships and delivering on your promise.
Well, we're very much looking forward to participating in that.
Well, thank you for all of you have done. Just the Madrona team, I know. Thank you so much. We've interacted on so many things, and I wouldn't be here without the support which you guys have given. So thanks.
Well, thanks for being here, and everybody else as well. You know, our investors, our community friends, our CEOs that are going through the journey. Thanks for being here tonight. We have amazing food outside. Please come grab some food, some drinks, come back in here, stay as long as you want, and let's continue to invest for the long term in this amazing community that we're all a part of.
Yeah, and just for the CEOs, Matt, I wanted to say, just keep believing. Just keep believing. It's 99% of the days are really hard, and it's a lot of gravitational forces pulling you down. But just keep believing, and as long as you're true to the data and making all the changes which are required, and the speed of action is really critical. And you get there. You don't even realize when you get there.
Yeah.
So
well said. We'll end on that.
Thanks, partner.